I'm just going to talk today about something that occurred to me actually this morning while I was contemplating some things. I was watching the news this morning. They're talking about a trial that's going on here in the United States, and they were mentioning, this right and that right. I watched a video this morning about some constitutional things, and it talked about, the Bill of Rights and the rights laid out in the Constitution. And I started thinking about what rights are, and it dawned on me that in God's realm, in His society, in His legal system, in His framework that He's laid out in Scripture, there really are no rights. You don't have rights. The only right that I can see that you have is a birthright. And that, from an individual perspective, is merely happenstance. You just happen to be born first, so you have a right to inherit it, to half the inheritance, right? Or a double portion. So I started thinking about this concept and how the whole concept of rights, right? I have a right to privacy, I have a right to this and a right to that, is completely contrary to God's way of life. What Yehovah laid out was a system of responsibilities. I have a responsibility to love my neighbor. I have a responsibility to love my Maker, to love Yehovah and perform all the things that He said I needed to do. And if you, as a person or as a natural being, follow those two simple rules, then not one solitary person on this planet needs one single right. Rights aren't needed in God's system of government because people love their neighbors, and love does no wrong. And if people are not doing wrong to one another, then they don't need a right to protect themselves. And see, that's what this system does. It's designed to protect the individual from the rest of society, because mankind is inherently evil and they will do wrong to one another. Now, it's my belief that this system put in place, the founding fathers here in the United States anyway, may have been well-intentioned when they set it up, but it was flawed from the beginning because it replaced a system of law and order that was already there from the beginning. You see, God laid all of this out in Scripture of what we're supposed to do, what our obligations are, how we're to treat one another. We had a system of taking care of people, taking care of the poor, and it was all through the tithe system. We're, told to do things the right way, and that land that He gave us would prosper. We would be blessed in our efforts to farm the land. It's only by His grace. It's a gift. That prosperity that we all, the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? Those rights that we identify in the Constitution of the United States. All of those things will occur naturally if one is doing what He says to do. So we've essentially relieved ourselves of any responsibility and replaced it with a set of rights. Now, these rights can be taken away. For instance, in the United States, we have an organization called FEMA. And this organization, when the President of the United States declares a state of emergency in a time of crisis, which is either not or very loosely defined, essentially the United States Congress is made null and void. This organization reports directly to the President, and it becomes the de facto government of the country. And they can do anything they want. They can take away all of your property. They can take away all of your car. They can take your money. They can take your food. They can take your guns. They can take your freedom. They can they can arrest you, put you in jail with no, rights of habeas corpus. You won't get a trial. They don't have to give you one. So it's those rights that our Constitution provides for can be taken away. Now, the verse puts on us, do things a certain way and to live life a certain way, those don't go away. Those responsibilities remain there forever. And to James's point here in the chat window, the double inheritance was actually provided so that the oldest son could provide for the parents, which is a responsibility. So it gives him the capability to fulfill the responsibility that's on his head. So there again, what appears to be a right, well, and it is a right, but it's there because of a responsibility. So once again, we have good evidence that anything that man sets his mind to do, if not that way from the outset, will be, before it's over, completely contrary to God's way of life. I have a lot of scriptures I want to go through just talking about what our duty is. And I just threw these together this morning, a lot of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is full of, what we call rules and regulations. These rules and regulations are there so that we might obey them and thereby preserve our brothers and our sisters, our fellow humans. So these, unlike the laws of men, which are designed to restrain your behavior, well, I guess, to a degree, our behavior is to be restrained. But the intent, I think, is not to control you, but to set you free. Because if you don't have to worry about anybody doing wrong to you, then you are free, in a sense. So let's dive into some scriptures here. The first scripture I'd like to go through is Deuteronomy 4:39 through 40. Deuteronomy 4:39 through 40 says, "Know therefore today and lay it to your heart that Jehovah is Elohim in heaven above and on the earth beneath. There is no other. Therefore you shall keep his statutes," right? So it doesn't say you have a right to this and a right to that. He says you, person, you individual, you natural being, you shall keep his statutes and his commandments, which I command you today, that it may go well with you and with your children after you, and that you may prolong your days in the land that Jehovah your Elohim is giving you for all time. So there we have it, right? We have an obligation to keep his statutes and his commandments. For how long? Forever. These are eternal truths. Now we're going to go over to Deuteronomy 5, and I'm actually going to read the whole chapter. Starting in verse 1 of Deuteronomy 5, it says, "And Moses summoned all Israel and said to them, Hear, O Israel, the statutes and the rules that I speak in your hearing today. And you shall learn them and be careful to do them. Jehovah your Elohim made a covenant with us in Horeb. Not with our fathers did Jehovah make this covenant, but with us, who are all of us here alive today. Jehovah spoke with you face to face at the mountain, out of the midst of the fire, while I stood between Jehovah and you at that time to declare to you the word of Jehovah, for you were afraid because of the fire, and you did not go up into the mountain. He said, I am Jehovah your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other Elohim before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is on the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them, nor serve them, for I, Jehovah, your Elohim, am a jealous Elohim, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. That steadfast love has an obligation, which is to love him and keep his commandments. Continuing on in verse 11, you shall not make the name of Jehovah your Elohim, or take the name of Jehovah your Elohim in vain, for Jehovah will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. And we can go in